Lamping here, PHRA's Executive Director. Welcome to P4, People, Purpose, Passion, Pittsburgh. P4 is brought to you by our members and sponsors, Latitude and the University of Pittsburgh Executive MBA Programs and Center for Executive Education. We appreciate their support, and we will hear from them throughout the podcast, beginning with the University of Pittsburgh Executive MBA Programs and Center for Executive Education. In this episode, Pete discusses his life's purpose. Life is what you make of it. Why not make it amazing for yourself and those around you by inspiring potential and igniting the fire inside of others?
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of P4. This is the podcast for PHRA, Pittsburgh Human Resources Association. I'm Pete Schramm, and I'm usually your host, but not today. So let me throw it around over to Ron Kubitz, who is known by most in our region whenever you have the H and R in your title and you're in this people space. So Ron, thank you for joining us today, and thanks for putting up with me for the next 15, 20 minutes.
My pleasure, Pete, and thank you for the opportunity. I obviously have big shoes to fill, but I will certainly do my best. So thank you. So yeah, as Pete mentioned, we are going to turn things around today. My name is Ron Kubitz. I am the Director of Recruitment for St. Barnabas Health System. So again, we're kind of on opposite sides of the fence today. So we're going to get to know Pete a lot better if that's at all possible. So we're going to start this off like Pete does all of his. Pete, why don't you give us your little elevator pitch of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so thanks, Ron. It's gonna be a fun one. I'm a people person, and for those of you that have met me in events, on the podcast, in person, virtually, I love bringing people together, and that all came from me growing up in Butler, Pennsylvania, on the farm. And it was interesting because growing up on a farm, you didn't have quick access to a lot of others. So from where I was to where I am is quite a journey. And it was, working on the farm and going to a farmer's market where you interacted with other people and you're like, oh, this is kind of fun. And they come, they buy their apples and peaches, pears, plums, corn, 50 other things. And you're like, wow, they walked away from here excited. And it just kind of started off with a smile. So learn that, greeting people with a smile and energy and enthusiasm goes a long way. Went to Knock High School, Swickley Academy, and then college down at Catholic University and studied mechanical engineering because I'm like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. Played basketball and track. Most of you know that I'm 6'8". So when I walk into a room, I can't really hide whether I want to or not. And then whenever I start talking, which is difficult to get me to stop, people are like, oh, okay, there's some more energy behind this thing. So after I finished grad school, also in mechanical engineering, went to work at Lockheed Martin. Absolutely love my time there and attribute most of my professional success to the people that I was around whenever I was there. Started off in supply chain, then worked on corporate strategy, was a supervisor down in Florida, went up to Scranton, Pennsylvania, and worked as a supplier quality engineer, and then down in Baltimore, leading vertical launch systems quality program. And then finally, last role at Lockheed Martin was a program manager. So I said, hey, I want to be in the decision-making seat and be able to positively influence change. And none of those promotions and opportunities would have been possible without the amazing people in my life. So thank you to the different mentors, mentees, supervisors, colleagues, friends, peers, family throughout the entire journey. And then left Lockheed Martin and went to a smaller defense contractor to build standoff threat detection systems for people. So to keep our soldiers safe, still bettering the lives of others. And it only makes sense that I was in defense contracting and working on hardware and, program manager to do I don't know if it's like a 180 or 360 or 540 if you like spin around a couple of times.
Big,
and do
big
something.
turnaround, yes.
Yeah. So Then I said, okay, well, LinkedIn kind of falls short whenever it comes to intentional relational connection over time, and some of the other tools that were out there in the workplace. So I said, you know what, I'm going to start a company where we actually connect with people over time. And so Googled how to start a company, like any first time non-technical outside of Silicon Valley entrepreneur does. And fast forward, we're recording this at the end of February. So March 4th, 2023 will be the 5-year anniversary of the idea. So it's exciting to be here with you today, Ron. And that's what Latitude is, right? The employee connection and mentorship platform. And, the system exists to make the lives of others better and to help improve and streamline the way that we connect to ultimately make, decision making, better and more impactful. Let's change people's lives.
Well, great. And hopefully we'll do a little bit of that today, and glad to be a part of this almost, anniversary of the original thought. So that's great to hear. And, it's funny you mentioned your height, obviously. And it's funny you mentioned, having a smile and that, because, we've met obviously on numerous occasions. We don't know each other that well, but one of the first few times we met was at one of the PHRA events. And I had told someone that you kind of remind me of a gentle giant because you're very tall. Rather a little imposing because of your height, but you always have a smile on your face. You're always very cordial, helpful, friendly. Everybody I've ever talked to, it's nothing but positivity. So you kind of remind me a little bit of that gentle giant.
But I appreciate that. I've been called a lot worse than gentle giant in my day, Ron.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't do that. Not here on the podcast. No. But Pete and I talked a little bit before we got started today. We want to do this a little bit more rapid fire, go through some questions, get some quicker responses, quicker feedback, give some, again, good benefit to our audience and what they can take back to their jobs and use. So you mentioned mentors, Pete. So you obviously have some. We all have good mentors. So let's stay on that theme. Maybe who's been your greatest mentor, and why should I, as an HR professional, take on a mentor?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of it's not one size fits all. And I have this piece of paper that goes with me pretty much anytime I have my uniform on, right? This gray sweater. So it's your personal board of advisors, and it's a couple of different people. So I always had a mentor in function. That was Brian, so shout out to Brian down in DC. I had a mentor out of function, that's Owen, that was Joe, that was Ben, that was Paula, right? So people that were in my shoes and not in my shoes, and they helped guide me, right? Hey, what to do, what not to do, but also had those champions, right? So kind of those more strategic mentors, if you will, that were a few more levels ahead of me, a little bit more removed, and they were the folks that kind of said, hey, here's how you plan out your career map. So shout out to Matt and Daniel and Patrick for some of those. But, the mentors were really side to side, peer to peer. The mentees, I keep learning from people like David and Kayla, Tony, Ryan, Luke, different people. So it's fun to make sure that the connections help fuel other connections, and then we can connect more of them to continue benefiting.
Mm-hmm. And that, I think you bring up a lot of good point, because it's good to have a lot of mentors in a lot of different areas, because none of us are obviously 100% strong in every particular area. My background is recruiting, so I try to be a strong mentor myself in recruiting to those that I come across, both in my organizations and externally. But in the HR world, which I basically came across with a pretty diverse path as well, that was not my cup of tea. So I made sure that I got strong mentors in areas like, HR generalism, diversity and inclusion, communications, the relationships, the labor law. So it's good to have a lot of folks in a lot of different groups that you can rely on as back and forth. So, I think that's a good point, that's why we all need mentors, and that's why it can benefit us in HR. Would you not agree?
Oh my gosh, so much so. And it's important that you don't get caught up in like, oh my goodness, am I ready to have a mentor? Am I ready to be a mentor for somebody else? It's like dating, right? Just try it out, iterate, and just being yourself and being real and being authentic. And you say, hey, my name's Ron and I'm new to this HR space. I'd like to learn. And how many people are going to just say, hey, I got you, Ron, right? Especially in this PHRA community. Hey, Liz, can you connect me to some kind of people that, might be able to give me a little bit of insight, guidance, share their experiences in these areas? And time and time and time again, the community and this family truly has been helpful for me. I know it's been for you, and now we're both able to pay it forward and give it back. So, just get started and don't be scared to reach out to everybody that's listening.
Yeah, I agree. So along those lines, obviously, we're talking about careers, whether it's our career, whether it's maybe mentoring someone that's new to a career. So, and there's obviously a lot of different guidance you can give professional development, career-wise, to help a person grow. So maybe what's the best advice that you've ever received? And then also maybe the best advice that you feel that you've ever given to somebody else.
Yeah, I think it's to always keep learning, right? Never stop learning, never stop growing. An investment in yourself is never a bad investment. So making sure that you have those accountability partners that say, hey, Ron, are you still challenging yourself? Let's go look at your career map, right? And say, hey, here's where you are, here's where you want it to be. You can have backup options, that's perfectly fine. So the best advice is to never become complacent and never settle. The other piece of that is to make sure that you're always growing, with others, right? Continue connecting, right? I'm big on the connection piece, but also have your own kind of non-negotiables. Just because you get into an organization doesn't mean that you have to stay in that organization forever. But that's where we grow, we change as individuals, right? Do you work to live or live to work? And that can change over time. And the biggest thing that I wish I would have said to younger Pete before was, hey, on your career map, you got your roles that you're going to have, your skills that you're going to develop, your professional certifications and trainings and education, but make sure you put that life piece on there. Pete in 2017 didn't have that life piece on his career map, right? Hey, I want to make sure I take these vacations. I want to make sure I develop this hobby. I want to make sure I focus on, the family, doing these things outside of work because hey, professional development. Yeah, let's keep growing. Let's keep going. Let's keep doing this thing. But also at the end of the day, we close our laptop at some point. So remember that, what's the quote, right? Don't get so caught up making a living that you don't have time to live a life.
That's correct. Yes, you have to have that work-life balance. You have to make people happy outside of your work life, and then if you don't, then you're obviously going to be falling short overall. So there's no doubt.
Hey, Ron, I hate to take my nickel back there, but one other thing, I always like to ask the question, what would you do if money wasn't an issue? And so whenever I'm asking people and kind of giving advice, I like to hear their thought there. And it's different generationally, but it's something that we should continue to ask ourselves as we're going through this. What would I do if all my bills were paid, all my, food was taken care of, everybody else was, that everything's taken care of financially? How would I spend my 24 hours a day?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question because you could pretty much ask any HR professional that same question, that if they had everything they wanted financially and they had everything they wanted, in life, would they still be, hopefully they'll say yes, but would they still be in a career in HR? Would they focus? Like I know myself, my passion, we talk about the P4, my passion is recruiting. I always tell people that if I had $1 million, if I won the lottery, I wouldn't retire. I would still be recruiting. I enjoy recruiting. That's my passion. I enjoy that satisfaction of helping people get jobs, helping out obviously my, employer as well. So, I could probably retire now if I wanted to, but I enjoy that part of the job. And it's really why I'm happy coming to work every day. So I'm glad you brought that up because it certainly is a, excellent question. So let's further that theme then. So HR professional that I am, what can I do then to convey this to my employees, to my employer, so that we have a lot of folks that are happy, coming to work and wanting to come to work, not because they have to, but because they want to?
Yeah, I think the first piece is being real with them and saying, hey, here's where we're going as an organization, talking about that mission, the vision, the values, and painting that picture of the true north, right? Your organization, St. Barnabas, is here to achieve this. Right. And we can't do it. Right. We're on the executive team and we can't do all this alone, but we need all of you. And here's why. And given the time to listen to individuals, right, and build them up and empowering them to build relationships and have their voice heard. I just got off of a panel talking about psychological safety with, doctors from around the world, and just got done listening to a podcast earlier today where some, high-level executives in the healthcare space talk about the power of mentorship, especially early on in your career. So I'd say, hey, organizations that care about your people and want to walk the walk and talk the talk, like, hey, invest in your people and they'll invest in you again. And oh, by the way, what happens whenever you do this? They're going to be more productive, right? They're going to be more connected. They're going to be more engaged. They're likely to stay there longer, right? More retention. So it's one of those things where it's going to ultimately save you time, save you money, and then improve some of those soft benefits, right? That sense of belonging, the culture, which, I think a lot of leaders talk about this, and it's easy to, have these ideas. Sometimes you need to go outside of your walls to accomplish some of these things, right? That's one of the reasons I started my company, is I didn't see the opportunity to get these things going internally. So it's like saying, hey, we're at a point where we got to do this. Maybe you have the solutions internally, and maybe, we're the right choice. Maybe we're not, but like, think about how to get to where you need to go, and don't be too big or too stubborn to, ask for help.
Good question. I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to talk a little bit about, obviously, your company Latitude, because it does really touch base on all of these areas. I mean, your product, the employee engagement software, aspect really touches all different parts of HR, whether it's onboarding, whether it's employee engagement, the interactions, mentorship, training. So I guess my question to you is then, and you kind of touched upon it a little bit, what did you see in the market or in the HR world that was lacking, that again wanted you to create this business? And can you maybe share, what's been maybe one of your greatest success stories to date, for a company that has taken the initiative to use Latitude?
Yeah, so we'll go through this one quickly. And again, it's the tool is here because it's a process that I did manually for ages, right? I guess a couple of years. And I have a stack of notebooks at home, Ron, where it shows every single conversation I had since the day I graduated from college, and then the different people that I connected. And then folks would say, hey, can you connect me to this kind of person? Can we talk about this? And it was out of necessity. I didn't have enough time and I didn't know all the answers. And more people from, the city I was in, DC, to then across the United States, and then people around the globe that I kept getting connected to and talking with. And I'm like, there's something else out there. And now we've figured out what that is. So whenever you talk about the solutions that were in the market and are in the market, whenever it comes to employee engagement, you can slice and dice that a bunch of different ways. And typically you have to go in and out of many different software platforms. Whenever we think about, what do people want to talk about? When are they available? Who am I actually going to have a conversation with? Where do I track my agenda, my notes? Well, when do I follow up? Ron, what did we talk about last time? And then the data around all of it. We want to think about these people analytics and holding people accountable, up, down, side to side. So then we can say, hey, we're investing in something. Where do we start? And where are we now? Should we keep going back to this? So enabling leaders to make data-driven decisions about the investment of their time and their money in their people. So that's really the big piece. So if there are organizations that are forward thinking and not everybody is in the office every single day, then hey, it's worth at least a conversation with the Latitude team to say, hey, where are we today, right? From the assessment perspective that we developed, to the trainings and workshops that are a lot of fun to deliver, and then the engagement and connection software platform where you're actually having those one-on-ones over time. So the biggest success story I'd say is probably with either the Army or a company down in Maryland, or a company down in Virginia. So we're growing in the Pittsburgh market now, which is exciting. But
Right.
Just hearing some of the phone calls afterwards and thinking, hey, hearing from them, Pete, I didn't know that these other people existed in my organization. And now that they're here, I actually found a mentor, and I didn't know that I could have this. I've been here for 4 years. Somebody else said, hey, Pete, I haven't had a one-on-one with my manager for 1.5 years. And now that we have this tool in place, there's accountability, right? I have a voice. I didn't really have a chance before, and people didn't take me as seriously because I wasn't in a leadership position. So it's enabling people to get to where they want to go, and truly leveling the playing field, Ron, to provide equitable access to unlimited opportunities. Let's give the people what they want.
Yeah, and that's a great answer. And you bring up a lot, Pete, because you talk first about how you're constantly looking to improve yourself, improve your company, and sort of kind of like taking a look under the hood, and it really translates to the HR world as well. We can't rest on our laurels. I mean, as you mentioned earlier, we need to be learning every day. We need to be growing every day. We need to take a look under each of our own, respective hoods, so to speak, to see, okay, what are we doing right that's working? What do we need to tweak? Where are we falling short to our employees? Where are we going above and beyond? So that's something that we have to constantly be reviewing, both internally and with our teams as well. And then obviously you mentioned the accountability, that that's very important there. We have to embrace accountability, but not only that, we have to be able to impound that on our leaders as well and get them to be accountable, and it has to really foster through an entire organization. So I'm sure you deal with a lot of companies. What do you do when you come across a client, a prospective client, and you see that maybe accountability is not going all the way to the top, or that there are some gaps in accountability? How do you really sell the importance of accountability to an organization?
Yeah, it just goes back to listening. What do you care about, right? Is it the bottom line? Ask the 5 whys. Okay, is the bottom line where you want it to be right now? Okay, why isn't it? Well, we're not hitting all of our numbers. Why aren't we hitting our numbers? Well, because some people left the organization. Okay, why are people leaving the organization? Well, they felt disconnected. They didn't have a mapped professional growth. They didn't like the remote or hybrid environment. Okay, why all those things? Well, maybe the pandemic, right? Maybe we change of leadership. Maybe we're just so busy we didn't have time to talk to everybody. And it's like, okay, well, what really matters, right? Is it the dollars? Is it all these different things? Because it looks like they're all connected. I don't know the answers about your organization, Ron. So it's really just a discussion. And again, whether we work together or not, I just have fun in each of these conversations. And now across PHRA, we've developed so many different partners that there's been many instances where I said, hey, not me, go talk to them, not me, go talk to them. And as long as we're heading in the right direction and taking steps forward, that's what it's all about. So the accountability, the biggest piece is, just write it down and follow up, have documentation, right? Notebook's fine, but I think email, follow up, hey, Ron, thanks for our time today. Let me just shoot you a quick note, right? So that we have that documentation, and that can, either save you or bite you in the butt. So make sure what you're writing is what's necessary.
Now, you bring up some good points there as well, too, because you touch upon the word hybrid, and you touch upon, obviously, the philosophy of having people having more of a remote type of a culture. I've been, I don't even know what the right word is, frustrated at times in the past myself, because I have not worked with some companies that were very remote and hybrid, positively oriented. And obviously things have changed over the last 2 or 3 years, and we have to obviously address this change, and we have to be open to this change if we're going to continue to prosper as a company. So your company, Latitude, and the offerings and the services, have you had a change over the last 2 or 3 years? How you deal with companies, or how has this really, your services, helped to impact companies in that remote hybrid type of a world?
Yeah, so let's just talk about it generally, Ron, and think about, hey, where we were to where we are. People need to have connection. And there's some statistics out there that even for some of those organizations that have people, I think it's a report by Accenture, organizations that have people entirely in the office, there's still disconnection. Right. Yeah. So even if we're here, it just comes down to the people and the leadership, right? Do we have a culture of cohesive collaboration? I don't care if it's in the office or not in the office. I do think it is important that we do come together at least a little bit, right? Whether that's quarterly, twice a year. I think more than annually is important to have some of that in person, right? Hey, high fives, bump elbows, handshakes, right? Just seeing more about those individuals, it brings so much to it. So whatever it comes to, hey, the pandemic came, and we all have to WFX. I call it work from anywhere, right? We have to think about how can we still be intentional with our time, right? And empowering our people. Hey, what are we doing right here? Essentially, this is a one-on-one video call, right? That's the idea, that we can take 30 minutes at least once a week to carve that out. And if leaders say, no, my people don't have 30 minutes a week to devote to, our culture and our belonging, then I say, okay, let me know whenever you do. And maybe it is once every other week, right? But if we don't have the buy-in from the top and people saying, yes, I do want to, me, Mr. CEO, Mrs. CEO, I do want to invest in our people. I do want to give them the time of day to connect, to unlock more productivity and profitability. If we don't have that buy-in, then it doesn't really make sense.
Pete, so we talked about a lot of different things. So I kind of want to put a bow on this and maybe wrap things up by just summarizing a lot of things and talking about HR and sort of maybe the lack of respect that we get or what people think about HR. I've been in HR myself for, over 30 years now in some form or another. And it just seems like it's gotten to the point where we're not maybe trusted. We're viewed as just, hand holders of the executive team. People don't come to us like they used to, maybe with solutions, issues, problems. I just wanted to see maybe what was your take on that, and what can we as HR professionals do to try to reverse that trend and overcome that and get maybe more value back within the organization.
It's tough, Ron. One of the first times I heard about HR in a professional conversation was from a leader that said, "Hey, whenever you get into a leadership role, fire everybody in HR, because they're the biggest headache you're ever going to have in your career, and you can't do anything with them." And that's kind of where I started, right? That was my initial opinion, initial influence. So as I went through my time professionally, I was like, man, I got to talk to HR. I see HR walking down the hallway, go the other way, right? I didn't actually do that. I like to talk to everybody, but I kind of observed and realized, like, hey, HR kind of has a chip on your shoulder. And I wondered why. And then I went to an agile HR class that Beth Davis taught down in DC right before the pandemic in early 2020. And these lightning bolts went off. And it's like, hey, the purpose of HR is to align people's strengths and interests to the needs of the organization. The purpose of HR is to be this super connector. Now you have the transactional HR, right? The compliance, the things that you have to do, but you also have the relational HR. So I think it's just like any other opportunity. Say, hey, I'm here to help out, right? And when it's time to listen, we listen. If it's time to contribute, we contribute. But, being a team player and a we, not me, and an us over, and others, right? But I think that's the biggest piece. And to say, hey, I'd like to participate. And if people say like, nah, you're in HR, just ask, why? Or just say, hey, give me a shot. Or, hey, maybe let's try this for 3 months. We can iterate more, but it's one of those things. And one of my friends, Kamiki, gave a presentation, TED Talk last year, and she thinks of it this way as like the glove of Thanos, right? Or Thanos from the Avengers movie.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to have HR, contracts, engineering, legal, accounting, right? All those different organizations together to really be powerful. And, HR and the people piece is a huge part of that success equation.
Great. I appreciate that. So let's wrap this up then, basically the way you typically would wrap up your podcast, and we'll buzz through a couple questions here real quick. And one of it that I like you always ask is to give people, what piece of self-advice would you give your younger self? I know myself, and I often tell myself this, and I tell others this, my son who's just starting off in his career is, go with your instincts, trust your gut, go with your first impressions. Don't overthink things, because that's when you have a tendency to make mistakes and maybe choose a wrong path. So what advice would you give your younger self?
It's a couple of pieces. Never stop learning, right? Always stay active, and it's okay to say no, right? And push things off until tomorrow. But whenever you have that balance of mind, body, and soul, you have to talk about it, but you actually have to do it consistently. And it's one of those things, the more you do today, the more valuable and helpful it'll be tomorrow.
Great. And I know you often ask for book, recommendations. Any books that maybe you've come across recently or read that you would recommend?
Yeah, so Psyched Up by Dan McGinn, love it. Greg McKeon, I forget how to say his last name, but the name of the book is The Essentialism. I think it's fantastic. And then also we'll talk about, Turn the Ship Around. And hopefully later this year, actually not hopefully, it's going to happen. I will have a book that's coming out with Dave Baker and John Plitzier. So stay tuned, everybody, for more to come on that one. But it's really about all these pieces culminating together. So those ones are books that I read often. Oh, last one here, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie. Another great one. Great.
Yeah, and we're certainly looking forward to your book. I've seen a lot of your social media where you're putting some hints out there. So we're certainly looking forward to that. And I guess we will end this. I know you're not at your desk. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach back here real quick. I don't really have a favorite toy. I know you always ask that, but I have a rock that my daughter actually made for me when she was back in grade school. And I still keep this, and she's 20 years old now. So I keep this with me all the time. It's sort of like my little stress, ball. Whenever I get stressed or I'm having a rough day, I just usually look at this and touch it, because hopefully the rest of my family won't see this, but she is my favorite of the family. So this really gets me motivated, gets me pumped, and it really helps me sometimes get through some of the rough times. So I certainly appreciate our time today, Pete. I'm glad that I was able to turn the tables with you and interview you. So again, it is your podcast. feel free to give us an ending here, sir.
It's our podcast. Nothing here is mine. So shout out to Liz Lamping for putting this together. Thanks, Ron, for your time today, and everybody else that's listening. One action item for you is reach out to somebody inside of PHRA and then go have a cup of coffee with them, either in person or virtually. And if you don't have somebody that you can connect with, then reach out to me, pete@golatitude.com. You'll find me on LinkedIn. You'll see me at an event, but go meet one new person and intentionally connect with them. Thanks, Ron. Thanks, everybody else. We'll see you soon.
My pleasure. Thanks, everybody.
People do matter. And at the end of the day, we cannot get any work done if we don't have the right people in place. Are your people connected? Latitude is the one-stop shop people connection software platform. Our software workshops and programming facilitate new employee onboarding, manager one-on-ones, stay interviews, mentorship programs, and peer networking to increase retention, engagement, satisfaction, productivity, profitability, and happiness. Imagine a technology that intersects your calendar with LinkedIn, Zoom, Google Docs, and your CRM. Contact Latitude today to schedule a conversation.
The PHRA P4 podcast was created to help build HR leaders through discussions with thought and business leaders on the most critical success factor of any business, its people. If you enjoy an episode, please help us spread the word by subscribing to the podcast and providing us a rating. We would love for you to take a screenshot of the episode, tag PHRA, and share it with your followers. Until next time, thank you